Hello and welcome to part 1 in a series of videos that I'm putting out this week where I break down all the fights taking place this weekend at UFC on ESPN plus 10 from a betting perspective. Now let's go back and look at how we've done this month so far, because this weekend will be the last major MMA event of the month. So we're doing pretty good overall this month. We had 2 bets on the Iaquinta versus Cerrone card. Both those won. We went quite big on Dvalishvili, who came through for us in a big way. So 2-0 for a clean sweep on the first event in May, which was very, very, very nice. And then on the most recent event, UFC 237 last weekend, we also made a very nice solid profit. Of course, we took a 2-unit loss on Jose Aldo, but played him relatively small due to the bacterial infection that he was struggling with about 2 months ago. And then also a nice big winner on Irene Aldana, although not a nice big winner. The profit wasn't that big, but a decent amount of units committed to her, so thankfully she came through for us, as she was struggling quite bad in that second round. And then a big winner on Vivian Araujo at nice big juicy underdog odds to give us a solid overall profit for the night. But something has been concerning me a little bit, guys, and I know these videos are normally like light-hearted and funny, and I try and go on these crazy rants to try and, give you guys exactly how I feel. I'm very passionate. I'm a passionate guy. I like to let it all go on these videos, but we need to just take a moment of silence just for a second, because I'm very concerned about something that's going on. Look in my eyes how concerned I am. This is the face of a man that is very concerned. So I don't know how this has happened, because every single video that I put out is age restricted. Yeah, it's all gambling related content. Children should not be watching my videos, and gambling is very damaging for kids because they're very impulsive, and obviously we know gambling is highly addictive. If children were to watch these videos and they were encouraged to gamble, that would be a devastatingly bad thing. That would be terrible. I'd feel so guilty. That's why all my videos are age restricted. Children should not be able to watch them on YouTube. But after the last event, I have strong suspicions that there are a lot of children watching my videos, and I don't know how they're doing it, because like I say, they're age restricted. It shouldn't even show up on YouTube unless you're over 18. But judging by some of the comments I had on last week's video, I think that we've just got shitloads of children actually watching these videos. So this is a message for you. If you are a child watching these videos, and I know who you are, because when you leave comments, you give the game away. Because there are so many people leaving comments that do not understand how percentages work. And they do not understand how probabilities work. So they must be children. So what I am going to do, being a professional gambler is not glamorous at all. Okay, it is not glamorous. But I'm going to help you out today. If you are a child who is watching this video who doesn't understand percentages and probabilities, I am going to give you some help right now. So I feel very concerned about this, and it's an issue I need to tackle, because I don't want people going down a slippery slope. So the bet on Jose Aldo, which everybody wants to talk about last week, everyone wants to bring it up in the comments. No one is bringing up the fact that we hit a giant underdog on Vivian Araujo and that she absolutely dominated and looked incredible. Everyone's just forgetting about that. Everyone wants to talk about the Jose Aldo bet, and I get it. I absolutely get it, because I told everyone that I was huge on Jose Aldo, and I told everyone I was 100% sure he was going to win. Oh no, wait, I fucking didn't. No, I didn't. Last week, I did say, if you actually take the time to go back and watch the breakdown video and read my extensive write-up about this fight on my website, I did actually say that there was a significant risk factor with Jose Aldo underperforming because he was hospitalized with a bacterial infection. Also, after I posted this bet, an interview came to light the day after where he said he wasn't sure if he wants to keep fighting anymore. He had motivational issues. He was thinking of retirement. So that would be a 5th red flag added to this list of risk factors. And I'm pretty sure, if my eyes are working correctly, that this here says the probability that I give Aldo of winning is 65%. And it's funny that, because that isn't 100%, which means I thought Aldo could actually lose. In fact, I gave Aldo a significant chance of losing because 35% is quite a big number. It's 1 in 3. That's giving a lot of respect to Volkanovski. So I am concerned that there are a lot of children watching my videos that do not understand how probabilities and percentages work. So if you are one of those children, you need to start at the basics, okay? Instead of, watching my breakdown videos and trying to understand these concept thoughts and really deep discussions and theories around what probabilities each fighter has of winning, you need to start at the basics. You need to go back, and I will leave a link to both these videos in the description below. You need to go back and you need to watch some videos that I will link to in the description, which will help you understand percentages. Here, Math Concepts for Kids have put out a great video which explain the very basic fundamentals of percentages. You need to start with that, and then once you've moved on and you've learned a little bit how percentages work, there's another great video which I recommend watching. It's only 3 minutes long, and it's basically going to teach you how to determine probability and work out what chances, because clearly a massive percentage of people watching these videos are under the age of 5 years old and they don't understand how percentages and probabilities work. So just had to get that out of my system, because it is very, very frustrating when you make it very clear that there are significant risk factors in a fight and people don't pay attention to it. It's also very, very, very frustrating as a content creator when people think that we're betting on robots, because we're not betting on robots. This isn't that stupid movie with Hugh Jackman where you got fucking guys controlling robots with remote controls and the best robot always shows up and the best robot always wins. For all we know, 5 minutes, Aldo might have had the best training camp in his life, but 5 minutes before he came out, he could have had a panic attack. Maybe he cut his finger making a sandwich at lunchtime and he couldn't throw a punch properly. Maybe he stepped on a thumbtack the morning of the fight and developed like a nasty little cut on his foot, and that was all he could think about in the fight, because he's a human being and shit happens. That's why when you are capping fights, like I always say, it doesn't matter about being right or wrong. There is no such thing as right or wrong in gambling. There is no such thing. It is a dumb concept, and you make me rant about it because you guys make me crazy that don't understand this. And it's only a small percentage of morons that leave comments, but you are fucking dumb. You're either 5 years old or you are dumb, or you did really badly in school, because probabilities can be assigned to any aspect of life. Yeah? That's how we make money. The odds on Jose Aldo were almost even money. Almost even money. He was a spectacular bet based on all the information we had going in. Based on the fact that Volkanovski had no path to victory when it came to technical ability and skills. Basically no way to take Aldo down. Basically no way to outstrike him. And yes, he won, because MMA is a crazy sport. That's why we watch it. That's why we love it. But to put into perspective for you how badly Aldo underperformed, Darren Elkins landed more strikes on Alexander Volkanovski than Jose Aldo did. One of the greatest featherweights of all time. So just stop being a dumbass. Listen to what I tell you in these videos, and you might actually start to learn something and start to make money. Now, I might have to stop reading comments, because I tell you what, guys, some people, and it's only like 5-10% of people, but I get stupider every day. Every day I read the comments, a part of my brain dies and I get stupider, because the amount of stupid people, it's quite remarkable, to be honest. It is quite spectacular how dumb some people can be, and I get passionate about it. Because people have this entitlement. Like, I take hours and hours and hours out of my week to produce these videos, to get jackasses leave comments insulting me. Like, if you don't like my content, just fuck off and watch someone else. It's not complicated. Do you get me? So I am having a huge rant, because you're an absolute fool if you think Jose Aldo was a bad bet. And what I will say, I always bring this back to poker, because poker's great for coming up with analogies, because I'm from a poker background. Good bets don't always win, okay? They don't always win. a bad bet can win and a good bet can lose. To give you an example of this, if you play poker, you can go all in pre-flop with 7-2 offsuit against pocket aces. You can do that and you can win. You could flop a full house. You know, you could hit 2-pair or trips and bust the pocket aces. But in a cash game, or when you were deep stacked, if you went all in pre-flop with 7-2 offsuit, you're a total fucking idiot. Just like you're an idiot if you bet Volkanovski. You're an idiot. It was a bad bet. I said it. Okay? So, if you don't like this content, if you can't understand percentages and probabilities, please go watch someone else. Because in this game, anything can happen. There is no right or wrong. On any given night, any fighter can win and any fighter can lose. One of the most basic fundamental principles of probability when you're learning it in school is to look at the spectrum of possibility. And you never go in absolutes. If Betch Correia fought John Jones, there is a percentage chance that Betch Correia would beat John Jones. There is a percentage you would have to assign to that. So please, do not try and be a total smartass when one of these bets that I give to you out of my own time loses. Because I am pretty sure 9 times out of 10 I am making the right decision. Because over time I've learned from my mistakes and I've put the work in to be able to put myself in a situation where I can have conviction in my decisions. I do not regret this bet at all. And if you think Aldo was a bad bet at these odds, you're a fool. You really are. You don't understand fighting. And that is all I've got to say on the topic. Now let's move on because I'm getting bored listening to myself ranting. So let's kick things off and make things a little bit more lighthearted in this video, because there is a fight taking place this weekend which involves a guy that is total chaos. So Danny Roberts this weekend is fighting a guy called Michel Pereira, who is making his UFC debut, and this guy is absolutely nuts. So before I go and replay this fight, I just want to show you this little sequence here. So Pereira is the guy in the blue shorts, and this fight you're watching here is actually his very last fight against Kim Dae-sung. And as you will see, he throws some crazy unorthodox attacks. This is like if Derek Lewis, Johnny Walker and Anthony Pettis had a baby, he would probably come out looking something a little bit like Michel Pereira. There we see him with a crazy unorthodox spinning back kick, and he just does all kinds of crazy shit. I mean, look at this guy. He's an absolute lunatic. This guy is just chaos. Absolute chaos. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this fight back to the very beginning, because there's nothing specifically that I want to talk about in this fight. I'll go through what I've found with this geezer, and then I will just talk to you about how I feel about this fight from a betting perspective. So, this guy's making his UFC debut, which is obviously quite a significant deal, because, as we know, fighters that make their debut lose a large percentage of the time. Now, this guy is total chaos, as you'll see in the video that I'm going to play in the background, but it is also worth... I mean, look at this guy. Look, this guy's mental. He's absolute mental. He's got a mental man bun and a mental fighting style. He's just crazy. But if we look at his record, you can see that his record, his career is also chaos. So if we go back through each of his fights, we can see that here he weighed in at 205 pounds for an open weight tournament. Here he weighed in at 190 pounds for an open weight tournament. And here, 185 pounds, 170 pounds welterweight, 185 pounds, 175 pounds, 175 pounds. So obviously, he's making his UFC debut at welterweight against Danny Roberts. And as we can see from his record, he's fought in loads of different weight classes. And he also looks like a very big guy. So I'm not sure how that weight cut is going to work out for him. What I would say is that even though he looks absolutely huge, in terms of wingspan, he is roughly the same size as Roberts. Roberts is 6'1" with a 74-inch reach. Pereira is 6'1" as well. We don't know what his reach is. So, this guy is just not very good from a technical point of view, and the fact that he's making his UFC debut means his chances of winning are very small. Now, I've gone back and watched his last 3 or 4 fights. There's quite a lot of footage available on Pereira. Here we can see that crazy sequence playing out. But obviously, if you actually go and look at his body of work over his last 3-4 fights, you know, he's not very good at all. He's got poor striking defense, bad takedown defense. He's quite reckless. He's got bad fight IQ as well, because obviously with some of these techniques we've seen him throw, he would get himself into trouble a lot of the time. He would obviously, here we can see flashes of bad striking defense against a very low level of opponent. I think this guy that he was fighting, Dae-Sung Kim, was only 4-5. He actually had a losing record, so a very low level opponent. We can see flashes throughout this matchup of Pereira's bad striking defense, and obviously some of those flashy techniques that he's using is going to put him in bad positions, you know, on the ground. He did kind of like that weird WWE style move and ended up on his back. You know, a more experienced fighter in the UFC would just read that and just avoid it and then jump in the top position. So definitely not the kind of guy that you would be looking to bet, especially in their debut. And here we can also see him take some deep breaths just 2.5 minutes into the fight with some laboured movement on the outside. And that's to be expected with a guy like this that throws so many unorthodox explosive techniques. He's going to need a lot of cardio and a lot of gas in the tank to be able to maintain that fighting style. And even this early on in the fight, he's looking very, very tired. Now, if we look at the odds, we can see just bad striking defense. He's very sluggish. You know, he's very good at being the hammer, not so good at the nail. But if we have a look at the odds on this fight, Danny Roberts is currently around about a 1.40 favourite, which is minus 250 for an implied probability of 71%, which makes this a very difficult fight to bet on, because in order to get any value here, you have to cap Danny Roberts at 76% or better. And Danny Roberts isn't the kind of guy that you can cap against basically anyone at 76%, because Danny Roberts is a little bit chinny, which hurts me to say. He's a British fighter and I love to see him do well, but he gets rocked or dropped or wobbled in almost all of his fights. He's also got questionable cardio, and he has gassed out quite a few times in the past. He's also got bad striking defense. Bad takedown defense. His striking defense is decent. He's got bad takedown defense, a low-level ground game, and very bad fight IQ. So even though Pereira is at a very low level, he's total chaos, Roberts should be able to stay technical, stick to the basics, walk him down and box him up. You know, at the same time, I can't trust Danny Roberts at the current odds, because I can't cap him at 76%, because you know they always say that the shots that knock you out are the shots that you don't see coming. And with a guy like this, Michel Pereira, obviously Johnny Walker's quite a bit better than this guy, but it's one of the reasons why Walker has got so many knockouts on his record, is because you just don't see the shots coming, you don't see the strikes coming, because they're so unorthodox. So that concerns me for Danny Roberts in this fight, because Pereira's so unorthodox. He could land something on Roberts, and as we know, Roberts is quite chinny. Wouldn't take much to put him away. So that is it for that fight, guys. The first fight on this card out the way. And there's loads of footage available of Pereira online. I recommend checking it out to get familiar with him yourself, but not good. This is an easy fight for Danny Roberts, but Danny Roberts is never going to be a safe bet. You cannot cap Danny Roberts at 76% over anyone in the division. So this next fight now, Charles Oliveira versus Nick Lentz, pretty much sums up this card. As you can see across the board, so many heavy favourites. Got Aspen Ladd as a heavy favourite, Luque as a heavy favourite, Charles Oliveira heavy favourite, Ramos heavy favourite, Desmond Green heavy favourite. You know, what's that? Julio Arce heavy favourite. Cummins Cummins Roberts. You know, if we look at it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So out of 12 fights on the card, we've got 8 matchups that include a heavy favourite. Just, it's been a long time since I saw a UFC card with this many heavy favourites, which means in order to be able to bet this card, you need to find a few rock solid picks to put in like a 2 or 3 leg accumulator, or you need to try and identify a decent value underdog. And the reason why I jumped at researching Charles Oliveira versus Nick Lentz is because it's quite an easy fight to cap. Because again, this is an expression I don't use too often, but I used it I think I used it for the first time last weekend, and I may use it a lot for this weekend because of how many heavy favourites there are on a card. But last weekend I said that the Jose Aldo versus Alexander Volkanovski fight was a checkmate matchup because Volkanovski didn't have any path to victory. He wouldn't be able to take Aldo down, wouldn't be able to do anything to him on the ground, and he wouldn't be able to outstrike him. Unless Aldo significantly underperformed, it was an easy fight for Aldo. And I would say the same thing about Charles Oliveira here. This is definitely another checkmate matchup, which is the reason why he's such a big favourite. He's just significantly better than Nick Lentz everywhere. If it stays standing, he should be able to put on an absolute clinic. Nick Lentz just isn't dangerous offensively when it comes to striking at all, and Charles Oliveira is consistently making big improvements to his striking. He's got excellent Muay Thai, and his striking's actually getting up there now and starting to rival his grappling. I mean, he's such a high level grappler. But for the first time in his last fight against David Teymur, we actually saw that his striking was his path to victory. I know that he won the fight by submission, but that was because the sub opened up because of how much success he was having with his Muay Thai, which was very impressive against a very technical Muay Thai striker, a good kickboxer in David Teymur. So if this fight stays standing, it should be all Charles Oliveira. And also on the ground, it's another checkmate situation. We know Oliveira is a super high level black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and while Nick Lentz is primarily a grappler, there are just levels to this game, and Oliveira should be able to absolutely dominate Nick Lentz. The problem with Oliveira is, and there are always risk factors, the problem with Oliveira is, even though this is a checkmate matchup, we know that again, anything can happen in MMA. There are ways that Oliveira can lose this fight. And if we look at the odds on Oliveira at the moment, he's a giant favourite. He's one of the bigger favourites on the card. Our odds are around 1.28, which is minus 357 for an implied probability of 78%, which means to get any value here at all, you've really got to cap him at 84 to 85%. And you know, similar to Danny Roberts, Charles Oliveira, no matter how big his technical advantages are, he is not the type of guy that you can trust and cap at that big of a favourite. It's just not possible, because he has been known to quit in fights in the past and just totally flake out and put in very strange performances. You know, he basically completely quit against Paul Felder, quit against Anthony Pettis, although it was a bit of a war, and he definitely quit and gave up an easy submission against Ricardo Lamas, and also quit against Max Holloway. Now he's on a good run. He's on a 4-fight win streak, and he looked absolutely outstanding against David Teymur. But you've always got to have it in the back of your mind that if Lentz can put Oliveira in a bad position, Oliveira is likely to either tap very fast to a submission or quit. And we know that Nick Lentz is an absolute warrior. This guy, he's the kind of fighter you have to kill in order to finish. He's extremely tough, and he's going to be there in Oliveira's face for 15 minutes or until Oliveira can get him out of there. So skill for skill, this is an easy fight for Oliveira. He should dominate. But at these odds, there's absolutely no way that you can bet him, because there's just no value there and you can't trust Oliveira. Now, with Nick Lentz, there's always going to be the question on this card, you know, are the underdogs worth a bet in fights like this where you've got one big favourite? And on this occasion, in my opinion, Nick Lentz isn't worth a bet, because in order for me to bet on a fighter, they have to have a legitimate path to victory. They need to be able to win on merit. I don't like to bet on the chance that something crazy might happen. I like to put my money in strong positions. So the only way that Nick Lentz wins this fight is if Charles Oliveira flakes out and underperforms. You know, if both guys show up and perform their full potential, I literally feel like Oliveira wins 9 out of 10 times. The only doubt in my mind is that Oliveira will flake out and he won't show up and perform to his full potential. And for that reason, I can't bet him as a heavy favourite. And you should have that mindset throughout this week. I'm probably going to be repeating myself a lot throughout this week, because there's so many heavy favourites. You know, big underdogs can be tempting, but you've got to hit the right kind of big underdog. You know, you look at our big winning underdog bet on Vivian Araujo last week. You know, based on my research, if you go to my website now and read the breakdown, or if you go to part 4 of the YouTube video where I talk about that fight, I felt strongly that Araujo would be better than Bernardo everywhere, and she actually showed that. So even though she was a big underdog, I actually felt that she could win the fight on merit based on all the things that she did good. I can't say the same about Nick Lentz, and I won't be betting any underdogs on this card unless I think these fighters can win on merit. So then we go into the main event between Kevin Lee and Rafael dos Anjos in a fight that is very difficult for betting. It's very, very difficult for betting for lots of different reasons. So it is two lightweights stepping up to fight at welterweight. Kevin Lee making his welterweight debut. And this is just a terrible fight for betting, to be honest, which is reflected by the fact that both guys are roughly even at the moment in betting. The bookies don't know who to favour in this matchup, and neither do I. And I guess it's quite apt that we have a fight like this while we've been talking so much in this video about consistency and the fact that we're not betting on robots and the fact that there is no right or wrong. Because I could tell you right now that if you hear anyone tell you that they've got a strong opinion on this fight and they really feel confident that either guy is going to win, I would just never listen to them ever again and don't take their opinion seriously. Because this fight is a perfect illustration of why MMA is so unpredictable and why it is not about being right and wrong, and why it is not about being the smartest guy at the bar. This fight is a perfect illustration of how inconsistency is one of the reasons why it is so difficult to make money in pre-fight betting on the UFC, because on any given night, any fighter can underperform, or any fighter can show up with a completely new set of skills that we haven't seen from them before, which we couldn't account for in the handicapping process. And this fight's a good example of this, because we've seen so many different sides to these fighters over the last few years. You know, if you look at Kevin Lee's performance against Edson Barboza, it was absolutely spectacular. He was strong, explosive, powerful, sharp, and he put a crazy pace on Barboza. It looked like an absolute cardio machine. You know, cardio has been the one thing that's held Kevin Lee back throughout his career, but he actually outpaced Barboza in this fight. And then if you go back and compare it to his performance against Al Iaquinta, even in the first and second rounds, Kevin Lee was looking quite flat. So inconsistency has plagued Kevin Lee's career, and that's what makes it difficult to cap this fight, because we don't know which version of him we're going to see on Saturday night. And also, inconsistency has also crept into Rafael dos Anjos' performances. So Rafael dos Anjos was one of the biggest victims, really, of USADA. You know, since he moved up to welterweight, hasn't really looked as sharp. I mean, looked very, very flat against Tarek Saffiedine. His cardio looked very poor. Difficult to judge him on the Neil Magny performance because the fight ended so quickly. Looked much sharper against Robbie Lawler, much faster, more like his old self, but Robbie Lawler blew his knee out in the third or fourth round, which made life a bit easier for RDA. And then obviously he's looked quite flat in his last two fights against Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington, although we have to bear in mind the fact that Rafael dos Anjos is really a lightweight fighting at welterweight at 5'8", and Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington are enormous welterweights, two very high-level grapplers. It's going to be very difficult for any lightweight to stop these two from wet blanketing them. And also, RDA attributes his lackluster performance against Colby Covington to a significant ear injury that he sustained, I believe, in the second round of this fight. If you go back and watch the fight, you will actually be able to see what he's talking about. So at some point in the fight, RDA injured his ear significantly, which meant that his ear was basically hanging off. So for this fight, RDA was just focused on defense and protecting his ear as opposed to trying to win the fight. So tough to judge RDA on the Lawler fight, on the Covington fight. It really is, and obviously we know Usman's incredible. So tough to gauge what version of both guys we're getting. Now, I have seen a lot of people online make a huge mistake when capping this fight, and I want to talk about it in some detail here because I don't want to see you guys lose money. So a big mistake that people are making with this fight is that they're assuming that because Rafael dos Anjos has struggled against two wrestlers recently in Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington, that he's also going to struggle against Kevin Lee, who of course is another strong wrestler. But like with anything with doing this, with anything with making money from betting on MMA, the devil is in the detail. And Kevin Lee, while is a very strong wrestler, his style of wrestling is completely different to Colby Covington's and Kamaru Usman's. And if you go back and watch, the fights between Lee and Quinta, Lee and Edson Barboza, and then watch Rafael dos Anjos against Usman and Rafael dos Anjos against Covington, you'll see the distinct difference. So the difference is Usman and Covington favour the wet blanket style, where they're just looking to turn a fight into a war of attrition. They're betting on their strength and conditioning and cardio over their opponents, and that means that they will drive you into the cage and grind on you and force you to work takedowns for the entire duration of the fight. And in order to fight with that style, it takes an enormous amount of cardio because they put a relentless pace on their opponents. Kevin Lee does not have the cardio to fight with that style. He is a completely different type of wrestler. He's an excellent wrestler, but a completely different style. Kevin Lee is more of a shot style wrestler where once or twice per round he will commit all his energy to a very, very nice deep double leg takedown in the hope that he can complete the takedown and get into top position. However, historically speaking, with the Edson Barboza fight as an exception, if you stuff that initial takedown attempt, which is very hard because his reactive double leg shot is quite incredible, one of the best in the game, but if you shut that down, or if you make him work hard for a takedown, or if he does get a takedown, you can pop back to your feet quickly, it zaps the cardio of Kevin Lee fast, which is very, very significant here because Rafael dos Anjos actually has very good initial takedown defense. It's only when you turn a fight into a war of attrition, like Usman and Colby were able to do, that you can get him down. When you drive him into the cage and you chip away at his cardio and force him to work and chain your wrestling together. Kevin Lee is not a chain wrestler. He's not a Khabib type fighter, an Usman, a Covington, who'll drive you into the cage. And if you defend his first shot, it's okay. He'll chain it into something else, and then something else, and then something else until he takes you down. Kevin Lee is a single shot fighter, and if you shut that single shot down, he's kind of screwed because he doesn't have the cardio to keep shooting relentlessly and spam takedowns for 25 minutes. But there is an asterisk next to that comment because he might do for this fight. He absolutely might do, because obviously one of the reasons why he's moving up to welterweight is because he's a big lightweight and he struggles with a weight cut. So now that he's moving up to welterweight, his cardio may improve. And if he shows up with the kind of cardio that he did against Edson Barboza, I think he stands a great chance of winning. Now, what I would say is that Rafael dos Anjos should have a big advantage if this fight stays standing, because he has vicious body kicks which will zap the cardio of Kevin Lee, very nice leg kicks, and just great kickboxing overall. Kevin Lee's striking is more of a means to an end. It's more to help him set up his takedowns. But if RDA can keep this fight standing, I see him winning for sure. Because even if Kevin Lee did have a slight edge when it came to striking, which I don't think he does, but even if he did, he's likely to be too tired in the 3rd, 4th and 5th rounds to make it count, because he won't be as sharp. So in many ways, this is just an impossible fight to cap, because we don't know what Kevin Lee's cardio is going to look like. We don't know how Rafael dos Anjos is going to deal with a single shot wrestler as opposed to grinders like Colby and Usman. It's been a long time before, but it's been a long time since RDA fought a guy like that. But what I would say about Kevin Lee is to give him his props. His entry on the double leg takedown is quite spectacular. It's one of the best in MMA. If you go back and watch his fight against Edson Barboza, it is an absolute masterclass in how to complete a double leg takedown. Because the key to defending a double leg takedown is to get underhooks in play early so that you can try and break the grip of your opponent, stop them connecting their hands together around your body or legs and completing the takedown and putting you on the ground. But Kevin Lee doesn't give you an opportunity to get underhooks in play, because when he shoots in, he gets so tight to your body that there's just simply no space for you to get your hands in under his armpits to get underhooks in. So Kevin Lee's Kevin Lee's double leg takedown is one of the best in the game. If you like, it truly is a joy to watch it. And if you watch the Barboza fight, for me, it's the perfect illustration of it because he looks great. But that is pretty much it for this fight, guys. I definitely wouldn't bet on this fight. And remember that, you know, the bookies, they're big multinational companies. It is their job to cap these fights. It is their job to set accurate odds. And they've absolutely nailed the odds on this fight. There's no way anyone can feel confident either side. It's an easy pass. And you're probably going to hear me say a lot of that this week because this is a very, very tricky card for betting. But what I would say, guys, is even though this is a tricky fight for betting, I will still do a live stream this weekend if you want me to, where I'll answer all your questions in the live Q&A chat, and I will also try and find a decent value prop bet for every fight taking place this weekend. So if you don't know what a prop bet is, a prop bet would basically be a highly specific bet like Lee to win inside the distance. If you want me to do that video, hit the like button below, and if every video that I put out this week gets 250 likes, I will do that bonus video probably on Friday night. And I would anticipate that the videos this week will be out a little bit earlier than usual because I can't see many of these fights taking as long as usual to research because they're all, you know, 8 out of the 12 fights are simple dog or pass decisions, which shouldn't really take me as long as usual to make my decision on. Certainly won't be agonizing over many of these fights, I can assure you of that. So if you want the bonus live stream, hit the like button below. If you haven't already, please also subscribe. Take care, guys, and I will see you tomorrow for part 2.
Too many thoughts on my mind, I can't sleep at night, so I just keep writing. I don't need no help, I don't need opinions, so don't waste my time then. I just been living online, my city don't show me no love, and that's fine. Fuck local radio stations, I got more plays than all of these rappers combined. I'm going again, I've been going in, I'm fed up with so many things, I gotta just let it all out. I'm talking about the shit they've been talking.